say. And we'll talk about that in just a moment. So without further ado, please welcome my dear friend, the great Cyndi Gennaro. And there he is. I've got to time my intro a little better. I should have given a little bit more time, but Cyndi, great to see you, buddy.
Great to see you too, John. It's been a long time coming, and it's always a pleasure to be in your company, even virtually.
Oh, thanks, brother. Thank you, and likewise too. I know I've been meaning to. Well, we've talked about this for some time now, and you've been busy, and been wanting to do this for some time now. So I'm just glad we could do it today, and I appreciate you. I know you've got something after this too, so I appreciate you taking the time this morning to do it.
Anytime for you, John.
Thanks, buddy. We got a few folks watching, quite a few folks watching at home too, and sorry, I want to just see if there's any questions. Bob Sidlowski says hello. All right. Do you know
Hello,
Bob
Bob.
Sidlowski? Yeah, you know Bob.
I probably, I'm not so great on recalling names, but if I seen his face, I probably would recognize him if he says he knows me. But I apologize for the people that I don't recognize their name because, as you get older, kind of the brain cells kind of get a little frayed around the edges, the memory brain cells. So, but I do appreciate him reaching out for sure.
I know how that goes. Yeah, Bob used to write for Modern Drummer magazine years ago, and later worked for. What are we talking about Bob for? This isn't Bob's show. This is your show, Cyndi. But he's been in the industry for quite some time, and good guy. So
Awesome.
Yeah, so I'm sure you bumped into him somewhere. But Cyndi, I want to talk to you.
Go ahead, John.
No, go ahead.
No. I was just going to say that it brings back a memory of someone by the name of Rick Mattingly.
Yes. Yeah.
Another ex-Modern Drummer, editor at large or whatever.
That's right. Great guy. And I still keep in touch with Rick. He's involved with Percussive Arts. So he writes for their magazine and their newsletter, and every now and again he'll reach out asking for me to give him a quote on something, or he's a good guy, really good guy.
Tell him I said hi when you contact him.
I will. And some guy named Joe Vitale has just typed in a comment saying, "What did you have for dinner last night? Better be some kind of pasta."
It was Saturday night, Joey. It was Saturday night, so we had a grandma pie, half pepperoni, half cooked onions with grandma pie, and we had a little get together with my daughter and her boyfriend and my wife, and we had a little, but it wasn't pasta. Maybe that might be on the agenda today, being Sunday, gravy day in the Gennaro household. We'll see what happens.
I had a form of pasta last night, Joe. I had risotto, so I think that qualifies as a pasta.
The jury's still out on that little risotto comparison, John. You got to have the stuff dripping on your mouth, and you have to have the napkin in your collar so you don't get any on your lap.
I do that plenty of times. Yeah, always, especially with the gravy, with the red sauce.
There you go.
I never miss with that stuff. Joe says, "Bravo." He is too funny.
I'll see Joe in a little while, actually. He's part of that Zoom call that I'm going to be doing in about an hour from now, an hour and a half or something.
Oh, that's great. That's great. Well, it's cool to have. I had Joe the other day and to have you today, because two guys that are, I think of like, not, the word road warrior is a sort of an old expression, but I think of like all the years that you've been on the road, all the tours that you've done, and the history of like your career going back to, I mean, I'm aware of your career going back to Pat Travers, but it goes back to, I looked, and the band Blackjack was before that, right? That was
correct.
Yeah. And that was when you were living in LA?
No, actually, I got the invitation to audition for a yet unknown band to be called Blackjack, but I got that call while I was living in Los Angeles. I lived
Okay.
in Los Angeles for 3 years in the late 70s, 76 to 79, trying to get my first big break in the music business, and it wasn't happening at all. And then by some freak of nature, and the universe smiled at me, he hooked me up with someone by the name of Steve Weiss, who was the attorney for Led Zeppelin. And he was putting a band together, a band project around Michael Bolton, Bolton as he was known then, and Bruce
Yep.
Kulick and Jimmy Haslip, and he needed a drummer because labels were now showing interest. And so he, as on Carmine Appice was kind of, or Carmine Appice, sorry, Carmine. He was involved. He was involved. The fact that I had his name on my resume that I sent to Peter Grant, Led Zeppelin's manager, never really got forwarded to Peter Grant. Steve Weiss, who was the attorney, opened the resume and was looking for a drummer around that time for the band I just described, and Carmine's name was on it. And Steve Weiss, as the universe winked at me again, Steve Weiss used to be the attorney for Vanilla Fudge, who was one of Carmine's first band. And so, based on the Carmine's recommendation, Steve Weiss called me, "Do you want to audition for this band?" So that was Blackjack. That was 79 and 80. And a little side note, and Carmine will admit to this, that in those conversations while I was having with Carmine in Los Angeles, because I was a friend of his then, I recommended to him that he go audition for Rod Stewart, because I went on that audition and I didn't get it because I brought my own drum set to an audition where backline was already provided, and I let Rod wait and the band wait while I set up a double bass drum set to play Tonight's the Night, which is a small lazy shuffle that all I needed was a hi-hat, kick, and snare. But in my insecurity, I brought my own drum set. So long story short, I told Carmine about that failed audition, and I said, "Carmine, you should go to that. I don't think they found anybody." He went down and got the gig.
Wow.
So there was kind of a reciprocal kind of, my name, when you do stuff for each other, the
Right.
universe, God winks at that and creates things in our path to fulfill what our goals are. And it doesn't have to be our goals. It could be any direction, but there's so much at work beyond our scope of imagination, behind the scenes, that what sets all of that good stuff in your path, John, is treating people with respect, no matter what their title is, no matter what color they are, what political, what they stand for, what religious, what their last name, how long their last name is, and you can't even pronounce it. It doesn't matter. You treat people well, and the universe smiles. And it's not an arbitrary thing. In my personal opinion, it's a law of cause and effect. When you cause positive stuff comes back to you. If you whatever you want in your life, professionally or personally, give it away, and you'll end up getting back in droves. It's whatever. Go ahead. So, to a long-winded answer to your question, the Blackjack was my first pro gig, and I
Yeah.
was blessed to be in a studio called Criteria in Miami, being produced by Tom Dowd, legendary Tom Dowd. My first project. How blessed is that? And
Amazing.
then that led to the Blackjack thing led to Benny Mardones's album, which I recorded, and off that album came Into the Night. And then now with Blackjack and both Benny Mardones being involved with Polygram or Polydor Records, which was the label Travers was on, word got out that Travers was thinking about letting go of Tommy Aldrich for whatever reason. And I was alerted of that and given management's number. So I called Pat's manager at the time. His name is David Hemmings. And I went over, and that's how it ended up that I ended up getting Travis's gig. And now I'm replacing Tommy Aldrich in a band. So that created some attention, national attention of who's this guy. And Travers was kind of on top of his game at the late 70s with Boom Boom and snorting
Sure.
whiskey, drinking cocaine. So that put me on the national map. And that's when the Ludwig endorsement came, and that's when Pasty originally came. That's when my endorsements came, and then after the Travers gig, then that led to then something that I did for somebody in the doorway, Dave in the doorway, and I signed an autograph for him when I had no time to do that when I was playing an arena in Connecticut, and I just because the guy was there to see me and not Travers, he was there. I was the last one in the dressing room. I took time and I helped him out and signed the stuff, posed for a picture, and asked him. He asked me to get him a gig in New York because he was a bass player in Connecticut. I helped him get a gig. 3 years later, he calls me and he's managing this new unknown artist called Cyndi Lauper. And so every gig that I've gotten, John, in my whole life has been directly or indirectly as a result of me helping somebody out. The Monkees gig was the same way.
Yeah.
And then when you get a gig, then it leads to other stuff. The dominoes just keep falling.
Yeah.
You know, it's just, and you end up living life with the wind to your back, you know, and swimming with the tide instead of everything being a struggle.
Right. Right.
And the key is just treat somebody. And I'm not telling you anything you don't know, John. You're of that personality. I know you for close to 40 years. You live that life, and that's why you're blessed, and that's why you have a great family, and that's why everybody loves you, because you give the positive. You are the type of person that makes everybody grateful for crossing their path. You know, and you know, you need help, you're there. There's somebody in a parking lot of a supermarket that drops their bag of groceries, you'll be the one to go over and help them. And that's why you are where you are, John. That's why everybody loves John DeChristopher.
Wow. Thank you, Sandy. Well, I got to say, I'm speechless, but that answer that you just gave me is so illuminating, because I didn't know you were auditioned for Rod Stewart. That's in all the years I've known you, that's a piece of information I was not aware of. So what a cool story that you, and what a great lesson to people that, you know, you were ambitious, you were wanting to make the best possible impression. So you brought your own drums. I think anybody would think the same thing. And not knowing they'd have a background kit there. Or
if I can just elaborate on that last statement, it wasn't that I wanted to make the best impression and bring my own drums. It was out of total insecurity and I did not believe in myself very much as a drummer at that point in time. And I should have, but I had no track record. All I did was play in cover bars and cover bands on the East Coast. And so it was because of my insecurity. And I walked out of that audition, and for the weeks following, before I sent the resumes to 50 managers that I, you know, like the music of the bands that they managed, and one of them was Peter Grant of Led Zeppelin.
Yeah. Wow.
So anyway, so but walking out of that audition, I was the lowest I ever was before or since that moment, because I moved to LA, 3,000 miles from my home, trying to get my first big break. Nothing was really going on in LA. I was promised a lot of stuff that never came true. And I was very disillusioned by the whole concept of me trying to get to the next level. And I cried myself to sleep. My relationship at the time was going down the tubes. I didn't have enough money for the rent at the end of the month, and I was about to throw the sticks in the fireplace. I was beating myself up mentally. I was beating myself up physically, drinking myself to sleep every night. But I just prayed, give me a sign, give me some sort of signal about what to do next, because I don't know. I was at the mercy of the if I spent 3 more weeks doing what I was doing, I don't know if I would have made it. I was at the edge of the cliff physically and mentally, and something said, keep going. That image of Ringo on Ed Sullivan, don't forget how you felt when you wanted to do exactly what Ringo was doing on Ed Sullivan, play to an audience of screaming women. Are you kidding? And that's what kind of kept me going. And that's when I said I got the idea of getting Billboard Magazine Talent Management Directory, getting the names and addresses of 50 managers I liked the bands that they managed, and hope for the best. Nobody called me back of those 50 managers. Peter Grant never even got my resume. But thank God he didn't, because his attorney, Steve Weiss, opened it, and there's the story.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah.
It's so the lesson is, no matter how far down you are, of all the people that are listening, that they want to achieve something in the music business or in any other business, and things don't seem to be going your way, have faith, because as long as you have a breath, you have hope that it will happen. And it may not happen on your timetable. It's not about when you want things to happen. You may have to wait. for the right situation, and it may not, something better may come up. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
especially
Yeah.
us, you know, John, as well as anybody in the music business, you know, you get off a Cyndi Lauper tour, and the next day you're looking for a gig.
Yeah. Sure. Yeah.
You know, so
That's
you
the
got to
reality.
have, you know, you got to have a faith in yourself, and faith in the universe that they're going to do the right thing, or the universe is God is going to do the right thing and put the right people in your path. And you just have to have faith every morning when you get up and when you go to bed at night. Just believe that it will happen. You don't sometimes know how, but it always does if you have the right mindset. That's the key.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know, I'll say also that you being, you know, the guy that you are, obviously the musician that you are, um, you know, and I'm just saying this to not take away from the fact that you get hired for these gigs because, you know, you're a great guy to have in the bandstand. You're reliable. You're, as long as I've known you, as you say, almost 40 years, you're the consummate professional in all the time I've known you. The first time we met was that drum clinic all those years ago, and at Freddie's in Boston, and I remember you coming in and you were like, you know, I'd only had experience with a few clinicians at that point, and you were so pro the way that, just the way that you handled yourself, and you know, I probably asked you 1,000 stupid questions, and you were so great to everybody. You were so great to the fans that were there to see you. And you know, you were, at that time, you were Cyndi Lauper's drummer. You were a huge star, and that made such an impression with me, that you were just a regular guy, Yankees jacket and all too. You came in wearing a Yankees jacket, which I
Of
thought
course
was,
I did. Are you kidding? And I'll be wearing it in Boston in September when I do the cancer benefit. I'll be wearing Yankee swag. You could bet on that.
I know you will. I know you will. You know, we can talk, you and I could talk, as we've done, for hours about that. And it's amazing how this town has, like, you know, breathed this huge sigh of relief since 2004. You know, it's like, we're like, okay.
Don't remind me, John. Next subject.
I do want to share one little anecdote with everybody so they know the kind of guy you are. And I think you'll remember this, but I have to also quickly jump backwards and give you one little comment that our friend Eddie Taduri made. And it's great advice. He said, never bring your own drums to an audition, bring meatballs. So I think that's great. Leave it to Eddie. But I remember you and I were, in 2004, you had not yet signed with Zildjian, but we had been friends all those years, and we stayed in touch. And I'd see you at the Collective when I'd come down to New York, and we'd always visit and hang out, and you know, we thought the world of each other. And I remember you called me when the Red Sox beat the Yankees in the Eastern Conference Finals and went on to the World Series in 2004. That unbelievable, you know, coming back from 4 games down or 3 games down deficit. And you said to me, well, I'm rooting for the Red Sox now. You know, the Yankees are my team, but I'm gonna root for the team that's the American League team that's going to the World Series. And I just thought that was, as the Yankees fan that you are, and I should tell people that Sandy would include me on these email threads, then I'd see like Don Mattingly's name on, you know, as one of the recipients. I'm like, holy cow. It's like, this guy doesn't fool around. But anyway, I so appreciated that. You know, I wondered if our friendship would be the same after that. And you made
Of
me,
course,
you know,
of course, of course
yeah.
it is, John. And I just want to clarify, when I said to you, I'm going to root for the Red Sox now, that didn't mean I was going to be blanketly rooting for the Red Sox from that point forward. I was going to root for the Red Sox in the following World Series against the National League team because I'm an American League fan.
Yes.
Just like when people say, oh, don't you root for the Mets? Don't you hate the Mets? No, I don't hate the Mets. The fact that if they're not playing the Yankees, I'll root for the Mets because they're from New York.
Beautiful. Yeah.
So
Perfect. Yeah.
yeah.
Good. All
I'm
right.
glad I clarified that because the Yankees just swept the Boston last weekend. So
Oh,
okay. So go ahead,
all
John.
right.
I don't
Anyway,
want. I
yeah,
want to take
no.
your.
No, that's okay. But I wanted to just make that point. And I know I went off on a tangent, but I did want to say that, you know, in all those years after we met, and we later connected when I was at Simmons and at Drum Workshop, you know, you were just going up and up and up. You were with Cyndi, you got the Monkees gig, I think a year or two later, and you've really had that gig when they tour for what, 35 or more years now, 35 years,
Yeah, on
and
and off. Yeah, I did
on and off.
most of the reunion tours that they did since 1987
80s, yeah.
till Davey died in 2012. But between Cindy's gig, now, were you working for Zildjian when I did the Freddie G's clinic?
No, I was working
Simmons.
at Freddie's. Yeah, I was just on my way out to LA to work for Simmons. It was right before I left. So I
And
was at
then
Freddie.
we reunited because Cindy wanted me to play a hybrid Simmons acoustic kit because she wanted to replicate some of the sounds on the record, on that first record. So, and then we were associated because you were the artist rep with Simmons, right?
That's right. Yep.
And I got
Yeah.
the SDS 5 first, and then we upgraded to the 7
Right. Right.
with the
I
nice,
remember.
with the cushy pads instead of the tile top pads.
They were easier on your elbows. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And
And
did you
then, and
yep.
then every time I ran into you subsequently, hey Sandy, when are you coming over to Zildjian? And that was always true. I'm always loyal to the products I endorse because I endorse products because I love the product. I don't endorse products because of how many clinics they can provide or like other who remain nameless. But and then finally, when stuff happened with Pasty, that kind of turned my attention.
I'm not sure I understand.
Hmm.
That was my I didn't mute my iPad, but so anyway, so I remember calling you when I was with Bo Diddley, and I
Yes.
finally succumbed. And I went, okay, John, I think we can talk about a kind of a deal. And then you said, well, come up to Longview. Is Longview, right?
Along Norwell,
Norwell.
Longwater Drive. Yep.
Longwater Drive. I knew the
Yep.
word, and it was awesome. That day I spent at the factory was one of the days I'll never ever forget. And you were very generous and very. And then you ended up coming to the Bill Diddley gig at that little jazz place.
Yeah, that was awesome. That was I was going to talk about that. That was like really, I mean, seeing Bo Diddley live was life changing. He was every bit as great in those later years as people remember him in those records. I mean, it was
Hmm.
incredible. And you played the shit out of that gig, man. That was just such a great band, and it was just like a great night.
Yeah,
Loved it.
it was. And could you imagine the thrill, me being a fan, hearing those records, because I have two older sisters, hearing Bo Diddley and Chuck Berry and Jerry Lee Lewis around the house growing up. And then the guy, the Hall of Famer who deserves to be on the Mount Rushmore of rock and roll, comes up and trades fours with me on my floor tom. Can you imagine
Unbelievable.
that the feeling that I had? I mean, I'm still in awe. I'm still a fan of people that I admired as a youngster. And then I end up meeting them, and not only meeting them, but playing with them, and not only playing with them, but they're digging the fact that what I'm bringing to the table is like really a reward more than any kind of financial reward. It's like so gratifying
Yeah,
to be
yeah.
part of that, you know?
That's exactly. That's exactly. And you can see that, and you definitely get that from you, and I see, I see how positive you are about all these things. And going back to when you got the Monkees gig, I remember coming to see you at the Greek Theater in LA. I was living in LA at the time, and and your drum tech Bob Euler, if I remember
Right?
correctly, Bob
I
O,
do.
great guy. You guys were like so great, so accommodating. I think I spent like from sound check on with you there, and I've said hello to Mickey and some of the guys, um, and that like you made. I think you. That's why you've had that gig off and on all those years. You made that gig your own. You made it like you played the parts that were necessary to to replicate from the record, but it was you, and it rocked, and you could tell the band really dug it. The band really loved having like you know a solid guy, solid groove behind him.
A
Yeah,
foundation.
foundation,
And
exactly.
that's something that I can relay to all the younger players that want to make a mark in this business, that as you go through, no matter what instrument you play, there's a certain amount of technical ability is necessary, obviously, but you don't practice to be the fastest drummer or the guy that can do hammer-ons on your guitar. The way you make it in this business, and the way this attribute I attribute to myself, is the fact that even with all your technical ability, serve the song.
Yeah. Yeah.
Serve the song, play what's right for the song. And if you're going on a gig where the records are already done and you're given a set list of the recordings, well, spend time with those recordings and replicate them. I'm lucky enough to have with the Monkees, in terms of the Monkees, Hal Blaine, and there was a guy on the East Coast too.
Fast Eddie Ho.
He played, but there was who he played on I'm a Believer, and he's got the book, not Master Studies.
I know you. Great session drummer. I'm trying to think.
Yeah. I think his name starts with a K. I have his book. I teach out of his book, Four-Way Independence. Whatever. So the point is that I have this. Hold on one second, John.
It's not Gary.
This is what I give.
Gary
This is what I give my students the first time for 27 years teaching at the Collective, or when they come to my studio now. This is what I tell. This is what I give them.
Yeah.
Okay. This guy is playing all the chops he knows, and he's impressing the producer. This guy plays what the song actually needs, and he gets the gig.
Yeah.
So that's it. It's not about you as the drummer, about playing all the chops you learned and all the rudiments you learned at 50,000 miles an hour. It's not about that. You save it for your solos. In that Tom Dowd album, the first album I ever did professionally, I'm doing a one measure fill in the intro of a chorus. Tom stops the playback and says, not the playback, but stops the recording and says, "Sandy, you're going to do great things, man. You sound really, really good." He built me up before he gave me the constructive criticism. So I relaxed a little bit because I thought he was going to ream me a new, what. But he said, "Sandy, why did you play that fill in the beginning of that chorus? And it was a one measure long, 4 beats long." And I said, "I thought it was a good fill, Tom." He goes, "That's not what I asked you. I thought it was a good fill too. It was played in time. Everything was articulated correctly. But why did you play it where you played it?" And I didn't have an answer. And meanwhile, I'm the guy on the other side of the cartoon playing this fill, thinking all my friends are going to hear this record. Look, I'm going to impress all my drummer friends. Meanwhile, it wasn't about the song. And Tom reiterated that. He said, "Sandy, that fill, the song doesn't need a fill that will be one measure long. All you need is a one beat, back up, a little pickup on the fourth beat of the measure, and bring the chorus in. You don't need to do that. Save that fill for your clinics. Save the fill for your solo. It's not what the song needs." And that coupled with another advice from Tom Dowd, he said, another time in a lunchroom, he put his arm around me. We were by ourselves. He goes, "Sandy, you're going to do really good things in your career. This is my first project, keep in mind. You're going to do really good things in your career. Every time you come through Miami with the famous artist, I expect a laminated pass. I want to come and see you." And then I'm going, "Well, thank you so much, Tommy. This is a guy that I read his name on back of records since I'm 14 years old. And he's building me up like that." And I'm going, "Thank you so much." He goes, "Can I give you some advice that's going to make you even better drummer than you are now?" I said, "Of course." He said, "Did you ever play with a metronome?" And I said, "No, Tommy." He goes, "Go down the road. I know the guy at the music store. I'll give you a good deal on a metronome. Buy a metronome, take it back to your hotel room, put it right in the middle at a real comfortable tempo, and play air drum in your hotel room. Air drum any beat that you know already, along with metronome time. Change the tempo, whatever." So I took those 2 words of advice. If it doesn't fit the song, don't play it. And B, rehearse with a friggin' metronome, because that's our job as a drummer, as well as I do, that to keep consistent time throughout the song is what the drummer is hired for, not the fills, not the fancy rudiments. It's the groove that matters.
Yeah. Yeah. Amen. Yeah. I don't think any of us, you, me, Joe Vitale, any of the great drummers that are watching this right now can emphasize that enough. And I don't mean to, like, as you said, this is not to lay it on like young drummers, but I feel like there's so much emphasis put on all that stuff when we're younger. I think any one of us, when we start off, is, we're trying to play faster, we're trying to play more technically, but isn't it amazing how, as we get older, it's none of that matters anymore. I mean, for me, it just doesn't. I mean, if I knew I could go to every gig and play great time, great feel from start to finish, I'd be a happy camper. I'd be, it's all I'd want to do,
Absolutely. And that's not to say now, now if you auditioning for Mahavishnu Orchestra, or if you're auditioning for Tool, or if you're auditioning for Jeff Beck the way he is now. Of course there's Vinnie Colaiuta, bless his heart, man, but that's a guy that when he's in a musical situation where it calls for technique, the material, no vocal, instrumental, jazz, rock, fusion, it calls for the technique. Well, Vinnie Colaiuta, people like Simon Phillips can pull that technique out of and play what the song needs. But they also can play pocket, and they're happy to play pocket. A lot of guys that play technical all the time somehow feel inadequate as a drummer if they're not showing all the stuff they learned in school.
Yeah.
But it's an insecurity. It's a look at me attitude. Put the spotlight on me because I'm playing fills in a ballad. That's not needed. It's not. So it's a matter of being a mature person and being secure in yourself. A lot of times I've been said, I've been asked, how can you go on stage after so and so? You're such a great drummer, or whatever. I'm going, well, all due respect to the drummer, I'm me, and I'm gonna do what I know how to do. And if it's not good enough, fine. But this is what I do, and that's not from an ego standpoint, John, but it's since that time where I brought my own drum set to the Rod Stewart audition, I've learned the fact that, hey, listen, at my age, I do what I do, and I've been doing it for 56 years. And if by now I should know if it's not good enough, and I think it's good enough.
Yeah, I think so too. I think it's, I think you've proven that point. And I have to tell you that I think Jeremy Dreesen.
Yes.
From New York. Yeah, Jeremy. I know Jeremy too. He's here in the Vineyard and he says hello. And awesome. I think he and I realized that at one point that we know a lot of the same folks. And he's saying hello to you. And
Jeremy Dreesen was responsible for introducing me to Lou Christie, who in the early 90s, he was a singer that sang Lightning Strikes and had a bunch of hits in the 60s. Yeah. And Jeremy Dreesen was his musical director, but then Jeremy got busy doing something else. So he referred me to Lou, and I was Lou's musical director and drummer for maybe 3 or 4 years. It was also early 90s, I think it was.
Early 90s. Okay, cool. That's really, I didn't realize that. Jeremy's a fine drummer himself.
He is.
And a fine human. And Jim Catalano, our old friend from Ludwig, said, "Hey, Sandy, you were there in the first year I started at Ludwig in '83. Always remember our clinic tour back then. All the best, brother."
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. Give him my best. Really good to hear from. I heard Jimmy is retired now. Good luck in your retirement, Jim. And I appreciate it. Yes, I was there in '83. And I think I was with Ludwig for about 20 years, I think. 10 or 15 years. I think I went DW sometime in the mid 90s. Yeah.
Jim, great guy. I had him on the show a few months back, and he's an incredible resource when it comes to the history of Ludwig and just everybody's friend. Great guy.
Mm-hmm.
Great guy. So Sandy, I want to jump back a second too, where you mentioned seeing Ringo on the Ed Sullivan Show, and that was a question I'd wanted to ask you at the very beginning, if if that had knowing we're of the same age more or less by a matter of a few years difference, if Ringo had an influence on you, and it sounds like he did. Was that like one of the biggest? Was that a big turning point for you as a drummer? Had you already been playing, or did that make you want to play? Or
well, To answer your question, that was not only that was the only influence, John. Seeing them, I got a drum. I got a toy drum for Christmas when I was 2 years old, living in a tenement in the Lower East Side, Little Italy of Manhattan. And I'm proud to say that this is the actual drum I got when I was 2 years old.
Oh my
And I actually drew a smiley face on and it's all stained or whatever. But so from the age of 2, and again, I mentioned that growing up, I listened to 50s music, 50s rock and roll, by the Mount Rushmore of rock and roll, or, Chuck Berry and Little Richard. And so I was always attracted to rhythm, but not until that night, February 9th, 1964, when I seen the Beatles on Ed Sullivan. I had never seen a drummer actually play until that night. I always heard my dad listen to big band around, so Louis Bellson and Sing 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 and all that stuff. And then my sisters played 45s of all that stuff. So, but I never actually seen it. I was sitting in front of and there was a lot of hype surrounding it and around that appearance, because the songs were being played and whatever on American radio. And I sat in front of the TV like this.
Yeah.
And just the Ringo playing, being Ringo, and the three guys up front, and the way they dressed, and the sound of that, the uplifting song, "She Loves You." I saw her standing there, and but then when I saw how the women were reacting in the audience, that's something that I didn't realize prior to that moment. I'm going, I don't really know what's going on there, but I want part of that. I want part of that situation. So from that moment on, John, I fell asleep with that image of me at the drum set, not picturing myself from an audience standpoint, picturing myself sitting in Ringo's seat, looking at the three guys from the back and looking at the audience beyond them. And that's what I wanted to do. That lit the flame inside me. And that's what I wanted to do. And I was not going to stop. And I knew in my heart that it was going to happen. It was just a matter of time. And that little incident in LA that I mentioned, that I was at the bottom of the bottom, that was the most I was to not achieving my dream.
Yeah.
I almost gave it up at that point, but I didn't. And I pictured myself and I said, I deserve this, because when you have an image in your mind that you feel like you deserve it, you feel like, and not only that you deserve it and you're going to do everything necessary to achieve it, but you have an enthusiastic feeling that it already occurred. Like if any goal that you have, if you close your eyes and imagine that it already happened, and the enthusiasm and the happiness that you would have as a result of it happening, and that kind of opens the doors and it replaces the universe, puts things in your path in order to accomplish what you believe you deserve and you believe that could happen. And that's exactly what happened with me. Sometimes problems happen to us on our way traveling through life. Problems happen, but it may not be the end. It is not the end. A problem happens to us because it's the universe saying, how bad do you want it? When I was inspired to bring my own drum set to a Rod Stewart audition, and I didn't get it. It was the biggest audition I had at that point in my life. And I could have easily gave up, and I was close to giving up. But I didn't, because I believed in myself, and I believed that it was only a matter of time. And it was the universe testing me, saying, how bad do you want to be a rocking drummer, or a rock star drummer, if to use an overused term? How bad do you want it? So it's a test. It's the universe testing you. When problems are placed in front of us, it's the universe testing us to see how bad you want what's on the other side. And when you get past that, how much do you think my confidence increased when I got the Blackjack gig and I was in the studio with Tom Dowd? And Tom Dowd saying in interviews that I was one of the 5 best drummers he's had in the studio in 10 years. I'm going, what? This is Tom Dowd talking about me? I'm the 5 best drummers, and this is a guy that produced John Coltrane, for crying out loud. You listen to Tom Dowd. Whoever's listening to this, Google Tom Dowd, and you'll see the credits that he has. And this is somebody giving me kudos, saying that I'm going to do great things in the business. I mean, that's an accreditation from,
Yeah.
that's like, Mozart going, you're going to write some good songs.
Yeah. No,
It's like, come on.
yeah. And you're exactly right. I mean, what better inspiration or motivation is there for you to keep pushing harder than to have Tom Dowd, basically endorsing you, saying, listen, just like you're going to do great things. You don't need to play a fill for that, that whole measure. You know what I mean? Little things like that I totally know what you're saying, Sandy. I've been fortunate to maybe not have Tom Dowd say that to me, but that, people that I respect and that are big influences saying and doing things for me that help me. So I totally know what you're saying about how that spurs you on to do better and to try harder. Yeah, without a doubt.
Absolutely.
And I was going to ask you, like going back to when that situation, when you auditioned for the Rod Stewart gig and you didn't get it, did that drive you to, kind of hit the woodshed harder and I mean, was it like a motivation to want to play more, to
What
work?
when I blew that audition,
Yeah.
the only place it drove me was to the liquor store. I'm telling you, I'm telling you, John. I was at the depths of the disparity pool. I was in despair. I was hurting myself.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't mean to laugh at that.
No, 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 no. It's totally laughable now because it all worked out. It came out, smelling like roses. But going through that period, it was a very dark period. And as I mentioned, it was the darkest period I ever went through in my whole life, man. It was scary. It was very scary. And it's only because I got the little tap on the shoulder and I used to go to cry myself to sleep at night, wasted off my ass, excuse the French. But I had that vision in my mind of the vision of me at the drum set with the three guys in front of me and the audience beyond. And and there was still a glimmer of the flame that was lit when I saw Ringo. Now the flame almost went out when I didn't get that audition, but there was an ember burning. And then when I got the call from Steve Weiss, and this is Led Zeppelin's attorney, what? And then the flame started getting lighter, lighter. And so the rest is history. Now it's still burning bright as I sit here,
I know. And so when you saw Ringo, you were about 12 or 13?
I was 13.
13. And that was the beginning. And so was the Beatles music a big influence, like from that early point in your drumming, or did you sort of open, because when you think about that time, like all the British bands that were coming over, there was like not long after that, Led Zeppelin and the Who and Deep Purple and bands like that. So was it like Ringo and the Beatles, or was it like all that, British invasion music?
It was exactly that. It was predominantly Ringo and the Beatles, and I'm still they're still number one in my book in terms of, and on that gig that you might come to personally on it, as a little aside, for Jay De La Soul at a cancer benefit, I'm going to be playing In My Life, which is the Beatles song In My Life. Plus I'm going to be playing Oh Darling, and plus Twist and Shout.
Oh,
with Jay's band. So, yeah, but to answer your question, as the Beatles, I was in I was in a high school cover band, so we did a lot of Beatles stuff, but we also did Stone stuff. We did Led Zeppelin stuff. We did, Herman's Hermit stuff. And I went on to play with Peter Noone later on to do some isolated dates with Peter Noone and Herman's Hermits. But so yeah, it was mostly the British invasion, and then I started getting into Aerosmith, and of course, I was into the Vanilla Fudge on the American side, but I was never a West Coast guy in terms of the music that emanated from the West Coast. I was a fan of their album CSN, Crosby, Stills and Nash. I loved it. I liked their songs, but in terms of emulating drumming, in America, Aerosmith, Mountain, Corky Lang, and Leslie, they were a big influence. But mostly British invasion, Cream, The Who, Led Zeppelin, and the Beatles and the Stones, and they were basically the influences.
Yeah.
And still today, that's what I like to listen to.
Yeah. It's interesting too, you know, you know, I mean, I got it. I got interested, you know, in drums when I was in music when I was 6 or 7 years old, and at that time, the Monkees had just come on TV, 1966, and I'm just like, as an aside, not knowing that the Monkees, you know, on TV didn't play their own instruments. They later did, but you know, Mickey was like a big influence. But you were a little older than me. You probably realized that they weren't really playing their instruments, but I think back to like my formative years, it was like it was Ringo, it was Charlie, it was all those British bands, but you know, the Monkees were a big part of it too. And it's, you know, kind of a cool thing that you're playing with those guys now.
Yeah, and to address what you just said, when I used to rush home and watch the Monkees on TV, and it kind of reminded me. I found out later on that that Hal Blaine and they had session guys playing,
Yeah.
and on all their records. But at the time when they were on TV, I thought it was brilliant. I thought it was just great, and it reminded me a lot of Hard Day's Night. You know, the
Yeah.
hijinks and you know and the fans and all of that, and that Monkey gig came about, again, as I mentioned early on, came about as I did somebody a favor. This guy named Jerry Renino, rest in peace, Jerry, but he was the musical director for a band called the Tokens, a 50s band. They had the hit Lion Sleeps Tonight.
Yeah, of
And
course,
anyway,
yeah.
long story short, on a Wednesday, Jerry Renino, a complete stranger, calls me. This is like the end of '86. I'm in a bind. My drummer bailed on me for a gig this Saturday with the Tokens. It's an oldies gig. If I don't find the drummer for this gig, I'm going to lose my gig as musical director. He was the bass player and musical director. He said, "Can you help me out?" And long story short, the gig was like 2 hours from me. It was in the middle of the winter. I'm coming off an arena tour, and I have to bring my own drums. The sound check is at 3 p.m. The gig is until 9. I can't go home in between. And then once we play the gig, I got to wait till 11 to get my drums off the stage because we had to wait till the show ended. And so it was a 12-hour day for hardly any money. But this guy was very sincere. He was almost in tears, "Man, can you help me out?" I tried every drummer in New York, and I ended up doing the gig. I ended up doing the gig because he felt really sincere, and I wanted to help this guy out. I wanted to light the flame in Jerry, and I wanted him to be grateful for having called me, and I did. Did the gig, everything worked out. A couple of months later, he gets a call that he's the musical director for the Monkees. "Hey, Sandy, you were so nice to me. You bailed. You would be great on this. Do you want to do this reunion tour?" I said, "Sure." "Who's it with?" "The Monkees." I said, "Of course. Are you kidding me? You don't have
Wow.
to ask me." And I jumped in, and from then on, I did almost every reunion tour thereafter. And Jerry and I became very, very close friends. And that was an association where you may ask one of your questions on your list, "How'd you get the gig at the Collective?" Well, I'll tell you, John, I got the gig at the Collective because I was rehearsing the Monkey tour, the Monkey material at the Collective because they rented rooms out at night for independent guys to practice if you lived in an apartment in Manhattan. So I walked out of there, and Rob Wallace, one of the owners at the time of the Collective, says, "What were you doing in that room?" I was paying for my rehearsal time. And I said, "Rehearsing for the Monkees." He goes, "Hey man, did you ever think about teaching?" And I said, "No, but I thought about something my mother told me as a kid. If you ever want to learn how to swim, Sandy, jump in the deep end of a pool and you'll learn how to swim really quick." So I said to myself, "You know what? I never thought about teaching. I hardly know how to read past an eighth note, but I'll give it a try." He goes, "Okay, when you get off the road, call me. I'll set you up from some students." 27 years later, I
Right.
taught at the Collective for 27 years. And now I'm teaching. I had to learn how to read so I can teach reading. I had to play with it. Took Tom's advice, and all my students play along with a click. So I'm rehearsing with a click for 10 hours a day or something. And so that made me a better drummer. Long story short, I did instructional videos called Drum Basics for DCI, which is Drummers Collective, the original VHS instructional video.
Yeah.
It was a big reward for helping Jerry Renino out that one night, and I had that, and that was my day gig in between tours and records. When I'm sitting around wondering what's going to come next, my day job was teaching the instrument. And if
I
you ever
remember.
want to
Yeah.
do, if you ever want to do something really good and really well, teach somebody how to do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was awesome because now with my confidence in my reading got a lot better, my chart reading. So I was able to do those one-off chart gigs, which I was insecure about doing prior because I didn't really know how to read. So it was a tremendous amount of benefit that came not only financially, but artistically from helping a guy out on a Saturday night in the middle of a winter to do one gig.
Wow.
And the payback was incredible.
That's amazing. That is amazing. You know, again, I've known you a long time. I assumed that you had all your teaching, all your reading chops together, and that I remember when you started teaching at the Collective. I think I was there at one point, and Rob and Paul said, "Yeah, we got Cyndi Gennaro teaching," because they didn't really have like a. Correct me if I'm wrong. At that time, they didn't really have like a rock guy there at that point teaching
They
like a
didn't.
rock curriculum, right? You were the maybe the first and only guy to do that. And
Well,
did
now
you?
that now there's other guys doing it, but yeah,
Yeah.
you're right. At that time, it was all Afro-Cuban, jazz, rudiments. There was all teach specialty teachers doing, but no rock. So I was hired to do
Yeah.
the rock, blues, double bass, the history of rock and roll music. Other classes that were part of the collective programs.
Exactly.
The style and analyzing the history of rock and roll. It was very, and in me doing research for these projects at the collective and these the different programs that they had, I had to go to school. I went and did my own research. So in order to teach people, again, the same with reading, I had to learn how to do it. When a student, the first couple of months of me teaching, hey, Sandy, can you transcribe this? And it was a Slayer record with 150 beats a minute, there's 16 notes at 150 beats a minute. I'm going, I can, but give me a week. I'll have it for you next week. So I would go home and spend that time trying to listen and,
Oh,
transcribe and write a chart for this guy. And that's basically, and I thought about my mother. Well, I did jump in the deep end of the pool, and it turned out really, really good. I'm really happy
wow.
to announce. Yeah.
I know. You probably could have never envisioned that when you were in LA and the late 70s, that you'd be transcribing a Slayer, you know,
No shit. No, no
double bass
kidding.
drum. Oh my God, that's crazy. That's funny. Hey, I have to tell you, our good friend Chuck Tilley is watching, and he says
Oh,
two of my
awesome. Hey,
favorite guys.
Chucky.
I love Chuck, man.
I love
He's
Chuck Tilley too. His band is awesome. Six Wire, the band Six Wire is awesome.
yeah.
I'm looking forward to going to a Predators game, Chuck.
Oh, cool. Yeah, he great band. He's a fine drummer too. I'm gonna just read you some of these comments too that some of the guys are posting here. Just a lot of great positive comments here, and what you're saying, Sandy. People are agreeing with the positive message and all the things that you're saying. So it's resonating. That's great.
That's awesome.
And yeah, and sorry, it's funny. I had made a note about the collective. Just I wanted to touch on it, and I'm so glad you just worked it in there because, um, as I said, I remember when it was it the early '90s when you started teaching there? Does that sound about right,
Um,
or
no, it
or
was
late '80s?
nineteen.
Oh,
It was late '80s. It
late
was
'80s.
after I
Okay,
got off that first Monkey tour. It was like late
okay,
'80s. It was like 1987,
got it.
fall of
Yeah,
'87, I think.
that's right. Because you said it was 27 years that you taught there. So
And I
yeah,
only stopped teaching there when I moved to Nashville in 2014,
yeah,
or else I would have still probably been there.
yeah. And did you later expand didn't you like expand it to like a music business program or something? Um, or that was
Well,
part of what you taught was,
yeah, part of what I taught because I used to get, these rock guys would come in for a lesson. They would go, and some guys would book a lesson for me, not picking up a pair of drumsticks. They would want to know, hey, like they would book time with me to ask me how I would get a gig because a lot of these
yeah,
guys that went to the collective were from other countries and other states, and a lot of them stayed in New York because of the hotbed of musicians that are in New York to try to get their first big break. And they would ask me about, what's per diem?
Mm.
I was offered to do this 3-week tour with this indie band. Who pays for my drumsticks? Or my drum heads? Or so I would get questions like that. Hey, how do I get an endorsement? Hey, do I need to be a big star to get in? So I get questions. Hey, what about taxes? So I would get business questions like that. And I went to John Castellano, at the time, who was the director, and I said, John, I'm getting all these questions about the business, and we teach every kind of genre of music here, but nothing about when they step out of the collective and on the streets of Manhattan. What are they going to, where do they go to get a gig, or what networking, or? So he goes, well, what would you teach? Come to me tomorrow, and what would you teach in a music business program? I went to him the next day, and I had a legal sheet of the topics that I would cover as a band guy, a band business, and another sheet how I would approach from an independent contractor situation. A 1099 guy, a studio guy, or whatever. And it started I went into him the next day, and he said, great, we'll start a music business program, and as part of the 20-week program or 10-week program at the collective. Right. And that's how it started. And in my music business class, twice a semester at the collective, they put a poster in the lobby inviting the public. They would charge like $10 or something. So a lot of times I would have the students there that were enrolled, plus people from outside, So a lot of times I'd have like 100 people, 150 people in a small Studio A at the collective down on the 3rd floor. Yeah. And it was very rewarding because I would get questions and say, well, I would have to come to the table prepared I would get questions about publishing. I would get questions about what's the writer royalty as opposed to publishing, who makes more money, the writer or the public. So and not being a songwriter per se, I would have to do research in order to satisfy those questions. And so I learned a lot in the process about the business of music and teaching it.
That's great, man. And what a great way to round out their curriculum, having somebody that could speak to all those things besides drumming, like such important things that they probably never really thought a lot about that stuff when Rob and Paul started that school. It was really about teaching, but like you say, so much of what you're talking about has become such a major factor in the life of a musician that that's important stuff to know.
And it's again, it's not about your chops. It's about a mindset. And it's a lot of the questions that I used to get is like, hey, how do you deal with like a famous person? You're there in an audition and, Lenny Kravitz walks in, or Rod Stewart walks in, or, the big star you're auditioning for walks in. How do you deal with that nervousness or whatever? And I don't want to be crude, and there's an old saying that I always used to say, and I'll kind of soften it. I'll soften it a little bit, but nobody craps Haagen-Dazs. So, at the beginning of the day and at the end of the day, we are all the same. We are all the same as people. Rod Stewart is the same as me. Ringo, yep. John, is the same as you. You know why? Because we're a human being. We're a human being, and that's the common denominator. We're all humans. We're not animals. We're not plants. We're all part of the human family. And when you advance the life or the career of someone else in the human family, it engages, it makes, I like to use the word God because I believe in God, but those that are non-believers, there's a universe, there's a lot of crap stuff happening that we have no idea is going to happen or has the power to happen. So it's when you engage, and then now, one of the biggest things, because I don't want to neglect mentioning this, and I mentioned at the beginning of this podcast that every major gig has come to me as a result, indirectly or directly, as me engaging somebody where I didn't really have to, but I did because it was the right thing to do, and it would light the fire in that other person. Again, 1983, I engaged this guy in a doorway. It was a Travers Arena gig. Everybody was on the bus. I was in a real big hurry to get out, but this guy is asking me for an autograph and a picture, and he asked me to get him a gig because he was a bass player in Connecticut. Hey, can you recommend me some gigs in Manhattan? I said, well, I can't recommend you unless I hear you play. So here's my home address and phone number. Send me a cassette of your playing. This is 1983. Send me a cassette of your playing. No, it was like 82. And I'll see what I can do. He could not believe this is Sandy's home address. I go, no big deal, man. Just send me a cassette. No big deal.
Yeah.
He sends me a cassette. Nothing happened. 3 years later, he calls me and he said, hey, Sandy, you were so nice to me in the doorway and you're a great drummer. You would be great for this girl that I just signed to Epic. She's going to be the biggest thing in 1984. I want you to come down and be in the band. I want you to be in the band. We're still doing our first record. So it turns out to be Lauper. Cyndi Lauper, an unknown Cyndi Lauper, doing her first record. I met her in the studio, blah, blah, blah. We started talking, whatever. And I ended up doing, the punchline is not only at that time, it was the biggest tour I ever did in my whole life, but I met the woman that's still my wife today on that tour. I met the woman that's in that next room, Sherry, in November 23rd, 1984 in Charlotte Coliseum when Cyndi played Charlotte. So I'm thinking to myself, now we're still happily married. We're married for 36 years or something, and have a bright, healthy 27-year-old daughter. And it changed my life. Just paying attention to that guy in the doorway. I could have been the rock star drummer, the arrogant rock star drummer, which we all know that a lot of rock stars are kind of fall under the category of arrogant. Could have blew right by him.
Oh, I can tell you stories.
I could have been, I'm sure you can, man. And then, but I could have put a polite rock star hat on and went, hey, buddy, I'm sorry, man. My road manager is going to kick my ass if I'm not on the bus in 2 minutes. I can't engage with you and leave. But I said, no, they can wait 2 minutes on the bus. I want to see what this guy wants because he's there to see the drummer in the band, not there to see Travers. Travers was only on the bus. And I engaged him, and the rest is history. And sometimes I think, gee, what if I would have just blown by him? Or let's say, where would my life be? Where would my life be today?
Yeah. Yeah, I think I'd be doing the same thing. I think I'd be wondering, like, you'd hope maybe that there might be another opportunity where something, but that one thing, as you say, that's significant because from Cyndi, that propelled you to these other situations and boom, 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 not out go the lights, but boom, 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 it's just catapulted you further and further along, and
yep, the dominoes kept falling, John. And
amazing.
yeah, and it's the way you act and think, not you personally, but the way one acts and thinks enables those dominoes to be presented, and then you act upon them and boom, 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 boom. And here I am, 37 years later. And
that's cool.
And I'm still, I still look at the future. The kind of metaphor I use in my speaking is I look at the future like I used to look at Christmas morning. And what does that mean? Well, when you go down at 5 o'clock in your parents' house and you go down at 5 o'clock in the morning and the house is dark, but you look under the Christmas tree in the living room and you see all those presents. And you don't know what's in those presents because they're all wrapped. But you know they're going to be good, and you can't wait till your parents get up to tear open those presents. Well, that's the way I look at the future. I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. Nobody knows what's going to happen tomorrow or the next week or the next year, but you have to have a positive anticipation like something good is going to happen. And it may not always happen the way you want it to happen, but there's a reason why. So just deal with it, learn from it, and move on, period.
Yeah, that's great. I know we're getting close on time, and I want to just tell you quickly that Kim Billings says hi from Mississippi, before I forget to tell you that.
Hi, Kim.
Lots of great comments. And I know I want to talk about what you're doing now, in addition to your playing, your speaking, but I also was going to just touch on the segue from, I'm guessing from the Monkees led to meeting David Fishoff and doing the rock and roll fantasy camp, being a camp counselor at the fantasy camps for the last. And
actually, David Fishoff was the promoter of one of the first few Monkee reunion tours, and that's how basically I got engaged with David. And we're still kind of we know each other. We're friends today, and that's what when he started the fantasy camps in the early '90s, I think it was. I started doing. I think I've done 10 or 15 of those rock and roll fantasy camps, and I look forward to doing more.
Yeah,
But
that's great.
that was a great concept, and I'm sure you're familiar with what the camp is, and
yeah,
it's a great thing because not only do I combine the two favorite things I like to do is teach and to play and perform, and I get to perform on with some of my peers that I admired from afar. Now I'm getting to play on the same stage with them. People like Elliot Easton, people like Mark Slaughter, people like Mark Farner, people like the list goes on, and I'm reunited with Bruce Kulick, who was in the Blackjack Gig. Now he's doing camps. We're playing together all those years later. It's just an amazing thing, and I never lost the enthusiasm for situations and moments like that where, you meet somebody that you admired from afar, and now you're playing with them. It's just awesome.
Yeah. Well, that's why I wanted to mention that, because I see you like the perfect guy for a situation like that, where, when there's a lot of great musicians that do those camps, and I'm sure that David's very smart about who he asks to do them, because you have to be able to play, but you have to be able to teach. You have to be able to kind of like herd the cats, so to speak,
Correct.
and bring everybody in. And in some cases you've got I'm guessing some players that maybe it's their first time or near their first time behind the instrument. So you've got to gauge all that and make it all gel. And I've been to a couple, and I've seen what you guys do. It's amazing. And I love the concept. It's great.
Can I just tell you one little short story about that?
Sure,
and then
absolutely,
and then
yeah.
we have some time. I mean, it's up to you, John, but we're okay. I'm okay as far as my schedule
Okay,
goes.
yeah, we'll go a couple more minutes.
There was a guy. Now, when I choose songs for my camper band, like you said, you get all levels of competency on their instrument. So I try to choose songs to do in the camp, the lowest possible denominator. So I try to pick the simplest songs. So one of these songs that in one of these camps, it was in LA, I remember, I picked Louie Louie of a song. So it's this bam, 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 dan, 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 and you repeat that 3 chords in that rhythm for 2.5 minutes with some lyrics over it, and you have the song. This one keyboard player was not getting it. He was not getting it. Long story short, he was not getting it. After a couple of days, and I would spend time with him on my own time without the band to try to get him to, he wasn't really good in playing the thing in time.
Yeah, yeah.
He came to me and he said, Cyndi, almost in tears. He was an Indian guy. I think his name was Shamsher, but he was an Indian guy, very sweet, soft-spoken guy. And it turns out that in his real life, in his other job, he was like a nuclear physicist or something in the Bay Area. He gives these conferences all over the world for what he does. He's very successful at what he does, but he couldn't play that 3 chords in time. So he says, I'm going to leave the camp, Cyndi. I don't want to do this. I don't want to drag you down. I don't want to drag the band. I'm going, Shamsher, you can't leave. I said, come in the room. Everybody was at lunch. I brought him back in the room, me and him and his keyboard. And I said, Shamsher, you took keyboards lessons. He goes, yeah. I said, what is your favorite song to play on the keyboard? Play me one of the favorite songs you can play. And it was Louis Armstrong's, What a Wonderful World It Will Be, right? And he played it beautifully. And I said, you know what, Shamsher? We're going to do that song. We're going to do that song at the performance at the finale of the camp. They have a gig at Whiskey a Go-Go in this case, in a venue. So I said, you're going to do this song. So he kind of faked his way through the other couple of songs, but when I went to the lighting director at the Whiskey, and I said, when you see me come to the front with the handkerchief, I want you to spotlight the keyboard player, because what he told me, Shamsher, in rehearsal, he goes, I'll only play that live if you sing it. And I went, be careful of what you wish for, Shamsher. So there it was, Whiskey a Go-Go packed. all the VIPs, all the other counselors, and all the star. I forget who was the star of that camp, but everybody was around. And the spotlight. Now it's time. The rest of the band leaves. Now it's Shamshir with the spotlight on him, and me with the handkerchief. Sky is blue, and he's playing, and I'm imitating Louis Armstrong. Somewhere on YouTube, there's a video of it.
Oh, I'm gonna find it.
And
Yeah.
Shamshir just nailed it. He was, and then afterwards backstage, he gave me the biggest hugs in tears, going, "Thank you for that opportunity. Thank you for having faith in me. Thank you." And then seeing his feeling and seeing his face, and get this close to my face, with tears in his eyes. That's what I do. That's why I do what I do. The money is yes important. You know, everybody's got to keep the lights on, but that's the reward. That
Yeah.
when I see a student's face, or when I'm playing opposite a student on 2 drum sets, you see my studio there. I got two DW drum sets face to face, and when somebody's fumbling with a beat, and they're dropping sticks and they're getting discouraged, keep going, and they finally lock up with you, and the light bulb.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's why I do what I do, to light the flame in other people, whether it's, you know, somebody needing a drummer for an oldies gig, or somebody wanting an autograph, or somebody, you know, whatever, or saying hello to somebody in the supermarket, whatever it is, just to see the smile on their face, and you know, and you don't do it while anybody's watching. You do it because it's the right thing to do. You don't do it for your own pat on the back. And that's basically, you're bringing up the subject of what I'm motivational speaking now to corporate. And that's basically those lessons that I've learned, and those, the way your mindset is, and the way you treat other people, and what comes back to you as a result, applies to all human beings, whether you're a janitor, or whether you're, you know, Bono, or whether you're, well, you know, whatever. No matter where you are on the corporate ladder, on the musicianship ladder, it applies to everybody.
Yeah. I agree. Yeah. That's great. And with that, I'm gonna let you get ready for your next call in just a few minutes. And thank you so much for doing this. This has been great. And there's a couple questions here. Maybe Cyndi,
Yeah, please.
at some point, well, you could even go back and you could answer them on the Facebook page. But Anthony Cucina asked a question about how you teach. What kind of things were you working on to improve your playing? No, let's see. He asked a lot of really good questions, Anthony. I'm going to see, there was one about how did you learn to read to teach others, which I thought was an interesting question. And you know, if
How
there's
do
an
they learn?
approach.
Well, I had, when I first started playing drums, I started taking lessons, and I learned from the stick control book. I learned, for George Lawrence Stone, I learned just the basics of what a measure is, what 4/4 time means, quarter notes, eighth notes, eighth note triplets, 16th notes. That's all.
Mhm.
I didn't know what a chart looked like. I didn't know what DS was. I didn't know what the coda was. I didn't know what the, you know, the repeat 2 measures, all the road signs were. But I had to teach myself that, and that's basically, I just kind of related what I was hearing on a record to how it relates to time, and how it relates to how many measures. If you can count to 4, you can count how many measures are in a song, and then me having the basic knowledge of what those basic note values, I applied it to the particular song that I was listening to. If I had a chart, a song for a student or whatever. And if you're interested in learning how the very, very basics, you can go to YouTube and search Cyndi Gennaro Drum Basics, which is one of the videos I did for the Drummers Collective, in association with DCI, with Drummers Collective, about teaching young kids entering the music business, and just the very, very basics of reading and the drum set itself.
That's great. Okay. That's great. Cyndi, I'm gonna ask you to hang on just a minute, because I know we're
Okay.
getting close to your next call. We'll
Okay.
sign off here the stream, and we can thank everybody for watching. Any last words you want to
Yes, I want to know. Well, anybody can. Yeah, I have a Facebook page. It's my name. I'm on LinkedIn as well. I'm in Instagram. It's all under my name. And if anybody has a question, now, John, you mentioned that all the questions are being asked. I can go back later and look
Yes.
at the questions and answer them. Yeah. If anybody
Yes.
has any inquiries or anything that I can help you with, or if you just want to say hi, just reach out to me. And it may take a day or two, but I always answer all my Facebook's situations.
That's
So
great. No, you do. You're amazing like that. And that's great. Yeah, this will be on your page and my page, and people can, like you say, put their questions there, and you can, whenever you get to it, you can answer them. That's great.
awesome. That'll be great.
All right. Thanks so much, Sandy. This has been a blast. Don't go away. I'm going to come back to the waiting room in 1 second. Eddie, great
Okay.
to see you, brother. Eddie Taduri. I'm going to be getting in touch with you soon. And thanks for watching, everybody. Stay safe if you're out there in this weather. And a big hand for my good friend Sandy Gennaro.
Yeah. And a big hand for my good buddy John DeChristopher, my brother from another mother.
Absolutely, brother. Thank you. All right,
Okay.
Sandy, hang tight for 1 second.
Okay, you got it. Thank you, everybody.